everyone.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of Full Press Radio. This is December the 7th, 2020. With you today is myself, Carl, and Stevie Nick.
I don't know how often we're going to have to do this for me to remember that I have to start this podcast.
We sat there in silence for a good 30 seconds. You plugging away on your keyboard. I gave you the thumbs up. Like, yep.
I wasn't even looking.
You looked up and I was like, all right, Nick saw the thumbs up.
I wasn't even looking. I was preparing for our top 10 list.
Which is going to be, we've got a very good top 10 list. And I'm excited to talk about the inspiration for that top 10 list as well.
Yeah, I know you are. You're so excited.
Full disclosure, I sent Nick. Did you see the timestamp on when I sent you that message?
No, but I had it when I woke up on, Sunday morning?
I was going to say, I want you to go back and check. Maybe it's a little too long. I sent that at 3 a.m. local time to you because those are the things that pique my interest at 3 a.m. So I've been waiting almost, 48 hours now to talk about this with you.
All right, I can feel it pent up.
It's going to be good. We've got some things to talk about this week. Some updates, like we always do, that are only half updates on the NHL season that's apparently going to happen. We're going to look at some actual hockey that we'll be able to watch coming up here, and a top 10 list inspired by, by Nick. Inspired by Nick.
Which Nick, though?
You.
We'll see about that.
All right, let's get to the NHL. Had some more meetings this week looking at what it's going to take for them to be able to have a season coming up. And the expected time, last week we sat here and said, there's no way that they can play hockey on January 1st. It's official. There is no way that they're playing hockey on January 1st. The closest date that we now have is January 15th, which is the time. So we saw Elliot Friedman, Chris Johnson talked about it this week. The likely scenario is either 52 or 56 game schedule starting on January 15th. Both the players and the league want 56 games for some sort of financial reason. I have no idea what that would be. And the regular season would end May 1st. So that's about 3-4 weeks later than it normally would.
But it finishes the whole thing would be done before the Olympics, like they want it to be.
That's right. So the hope is that the Stanley Cup would be handed out by July the 7th, letting them, and that's worst case scenario, every series pushes to the max. We can't lose any games. July 7th would be that time that it wraps up.
So here's my question for the NHL and the NHLPA. What if the season doesn't start on February 15th?
January 15th. But
January
yes.
15th.
January 15th, yeah.
See, to me, even February seems unrealistic at this point. But what if the season doesn't start at that time? And you have to drop below 50 games to make it all work?
Right. We saw lockouts, shortened seasons have been 48 games. And at that point in time, the NHL said, it does not make financial sense for us to play a season of less than 48 games. And I would say, based off of our conversation last week where they said $150 million just in ticket revenue on average being lost per team. Yeah. You need as every game possible.
And they're not going to have fans in those seats for a long time still. So they I'm sure in one of their projections, they've got fans in seats at X time, but it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I hate to be the negative Nick here. I don't see it happening by January 15th.
Do you see it happening at all?
I think if they can't make it happen by January 15th, they're going to have a hard time making it happen at all.
But part of the thing that I see as a big issue here is the NBA is currently starting things up, right? Teams are reporting, preseason activities are getting fired up, and it is going to be very hard for the NHL to explain to TV partners, marketing partners, why the NBA can start in December and they can't start till February. I think that's going to be a very hard thing for them to have to figure out and to explain to the people that they owe that responsibility to.
But it comes down to dollars for them. If they can't get fans in the seats, it's like they could start January 15th if they're just like, okay, no fans at all. We're just going to play in empty arenas for the whole season. The risk factor goes way low at that point.
Yeah.
But I don't think they want to accept those financial losses that come with that.
I can definitely understand that's going to be the issue, right? The NBA has a much larger TV contract than much larger than the NHL. And if that's not enough for them, now this is just purely logistics that they're saying January 15th is the start date. From the conversations that were happening, there was no talk on money happening at those meetings. It was just like 2-day meeting. Let's talk about logistics. Let's figure out how to get a season to happen, not financially.
I mean, I'm sure they've talked about money. Maybe they don't want to tell the reporters that.
Right.
But I'm sure they've talked about money.
I mean,
it would be irresponsible if they didn't.
They're like, all right, you know how we told you we wanted that money? Let's just put that on the back burner for now. Let's not talk about it. We'll just move on. Yeah.
Billions of dollars? Don't worry about. Just don't think about billions of dollars right now.
We'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about the billions later. No. Friedman, you got to dig deeper, bud. Take it from me, not a journalist.
If this were to happen, I know you mentioned a few weeks ago, you reminded us that some of these teams that haven't played since March were wanting to be able to start things sooner. And that seems to be the case. If you did not make the playoffs last year, so those 7 teams, they get to show up for camp a few days early. They'll be showing up December 28th. Other teams will show up in January, and there will be likely 0 preseason games. So they will go from camp to games that count.
So they're going to do a 2-week training camp leading up to the start of the season?
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is going to be a disaster.
There's
Might be fun to watch.
I mean, but here's the thing, right? We now have the San Francisco 49ers are playing on Monday Night Football tonight. I know you're not a big NFL fan, so this will be news to you. They are the home team tonight, and they are playing that game in Arizona because Santa Clara County has said you are not allowed to hold contact activities, and the 49ers got kicked out of town. That would be likely the same scenario for the Sharks if they were to come back in that time. And I believe that's through the end of the year. So the Sharks would not be able to hold camp in San Jose. They likely would not be able to hold games in their arena when the season would start. So we're going to already have a scenario where potential for mini bubbles will happen. I've seen the potential of teams just playing outside. What do you think about that? Just your home arena is now the football stadium down the road.
What do I think about that? I feel real bad for the rink maintenance guy who's got to keep that ice up to snuff every day.
That's going to be, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of, I mean, maybe not. I would assume there's a lot of unused football stadiums right now or baseball fields. Because if you're not packing it with fans, you can. But it also makes it easier, right? We see football games with fans in the stands. We see college games. We see high school football games with fans there. Definitely more of a possibility for teams to get that revenue. I don't know how much it costs like that, right? I don't know how much it costs to maintain an outdoor arena for months.
Not to mention having to pull that production together. Like, I know the Winter Classic is a spectacle, but just think about having to set up cameras and lights and all around kind of an outdoor makeshift ice rink.
Yeah.
Probably causes the networks more trouble.
To have to bring in all that special gear and not just what they normally have.
Yeah.
Probably. But hey, you know what? Whatever it takes, right?
At least they're getting creative. That I like.
Very, very much so. So we could see some shared ice perhaps with San Jose, maybe moving somewhere. There's going to be some AHL rinks that are available. There will be places for the Sharks to play. I think they could just move around. They could be in whatever bubble you want. Move into the Canadian bubble. Come on.
See, now Canada's an interesting variable in this whole return to play thing. I with what's happening in every province of this country right now, I can't see any premier or even the federal government giving the go ahead on professional sports games unless they're playing in a bubble again, which maybe the Canadian teams are planning on doing.
I was going to say, because there are two. I don't know if you saw this other news. The Calgary's winter sport, which is where a lot of the Winter Olympics were hosted, wind sport, is going to be a bubble for every curling tournament in Canada this year. So if you want to curl professionally this year, come to Calgary. This is your chance.
In Calgary?
Yes.
So you got curling in Calgary. You got the World Juniors in Edmonton. Shoot, let's just bring all the sports to Alberta.
I mean, and it only makes sense, right? Whatever they did to convince the NHL to come to Edmonton, it sold everyone else on this province.
Holy moly. I don't even know what to say about that. This is crazy.
Anyway, so I think we might see some bubbles. I think we might see, some weird scenario. It'll definitely be a weird scheduling situation where I foresee that you'll have a lot more like home and homes where you just play a team and I play this team twice now and twice at the end of the season and never in the middle, so that it makes rescheduling easier if you need to. It makes all those sorts of things easier to just try to jam them in. So
Carl, I don't know, man. We're going to be back here next Monday and we're going to be talking about whether or not the NHL is going to start on January 31st. And we're going to say there's no way they're starting on January 31st.
That's true. Because we say that every week. Every week we say there's no way it's happening. And then every week by about Thursday, they say it's not happening. And it pushes back. And we repeat this over and over again.
You're just going to push it back 2 weeks every time.
Every single day. Yeah. So one of those tournaments, though, let's talk about those World Juniors. Those World Juniors are happening in Edmonton this year using that Edmonton bubble like we talked about last week. And teams are starting to show up. So, which also means that it's time for Bob McKenzie to come out of retirement, which is great.
What do we get him for the next 3 weeks?
We get him for some World Junior coverage, which is going to be nice. So Team Canada has yet to be allowed to return to the ice yet. So they are still in quarantine. But for teams to be able to play in this tournament, they need to pass multiple, I believe it's 3 negative tests in 7 days to enter the Edmonton bubble for these players. So from that side, I mean, that shows that it's likely going to be as successful using a similar criteria that they use for the NHL, and that worked well. So if they can have that same success and use that same criteria, I think they're going to be set up well. That said, there's less likelihood this time that it's going to be as successful.
I mean, you have people flying in from all over the world, probably pretty soon.
Yes, so they have to be in Edmonton by Sunday to make this happen. And this is all from Bob McKenzie. So he said, be there by Sunday, then you do a 4-day quarantine, and then you get tested and let into the bubble for December 18th. So that's when teams will be let into the bubble, is on that point in time. And so players that are testing positive now are not going to be able to play in this tournament. You're not going to be able to get in there. It doesn't sound like if you're not in when the tournament starts, it doesn't sound like they're letting more people in.
They can't. That's the whole point of the bubble.
Well, because we saw it with the NHL bubble, right? Where players who were hurt got healthy, they would quarantine and come in. But this tournament is so short that there is really no point in saying fly across the country, quarantine for 7 days, and then play in a gold medal game. It's not something that they're willing to take a chance on.
Yeah, it makes it makes no sense. That's the right move. This tournament, I think, is going to happen.
I think so. I mean,
maybe some teams will not be playing with their full rosters. We'll see how the next couple of weeks shake out, but I think this one they're going to plow through and they're going to get it done.
The good news is that if there is a widespread outbreak, they might not know till the tournament's already done because it's so short.
That's actually very true. So are they scheduled to start on Boxing Day again?
They're still scheduled to start as per usual. I thought it was Christmas Day they moved it to. I believe they start on the 25th.
Oh,
could be mistaken on that. So we'll be getting that. And I, for one, am very excited for hockey to be back. I mean, all this talk, I am sick of talking just about that. Hockey's going to be back, but looks like Team Canada is going to be without arguably their best player, Alexis Lafrenière, this year's number 1 overall pick, not going to be there for Team Canada.
I don't know if it's arguably. I think it is straight up their best. Like, he was their best player last year.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even drafted yet. So the Rangers holding him back. They will not release him.
So games for the Rangers don't start till the 15th. This tournament will be done by then. What is the issue with the Rangers letting him go and play? This is his training camp, and it's going to be more competitive. He'll be more ready for a shortened season than anyone else on this team. Why would they not want this?
Nah, because training camp's more just about the physical training on and off the ice. It's about bringing the team together and starting to build that chemistry and figure out who you're going to play with and make friends. And especially for a player who's just drafted, and this is going to be his first NHL training camp, they're going to want him initiated into all of that. They don't want him to skip their team training camp, especially. This is actually a pretty good sign that they're planning on playing him this year.
Was there ever a question on him playing? I know that there was about some of those other players, but was there a question?
I wouldn't think so.
But now we don't have to.
Not for me, but now we don't have to question it.
Now we know.
And I just think these training camps for the NHL teams, especially for a new young player, it's not just about the on-ice conditioning. It's about the team atmosphere and chemistry, and they want him in all of that, which makes sense to me, actually.
That does, right? You want him to be, and I mean, this Rangers team is one that very likely is going to be contending for a playoff spot. This is not your average, we just got the first overall pick team.
Yeah. Yeah. So Lafreniere's out. I was going to say who was in, but their website is not updated with the roster. So there goes my dramatic moment.
I mean, there is a lot of players that we would not normally expect to be there that are, right? For example, like we've got Bowen Byram would not have been on this team and is, right? We're going to have that across the board. Players that normally would, I mean, this is an under 21 tournament, and we are going to see a number of 20-year-olds on these teams that we would have almost no chance of seeing.
That's true. That's a good point. The one player I did see too is Quentin Byfield, who didn't get to play much last year. So yeah. I'm interested in seeing him. The Red Wings have a slew of prospects in this tournament, so I'm going to be watching a lot of hockey between Christmas and New Year's.
There was one. Did you see? There was one today that is missing the tournament. Did you?
I did not see that.
Okay. I forget who it was, but I did see someone is missing from the Red Wings prospect who's going to be missing. So, another thing that will be happening. So yeah, we'll see. I'm excited for it to happen. And as we get closer, I mean, normally we kind of like glance over it because there's lots of NHL happening, but this year I foresee us definitely covering this tournament.
We're just going to straight up be a World Juniors podcast for a week.
And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong. And by the way, you were right. It does start on Christmas Day. The primetime game is Russia versus USA.
Ooh, that's going to be a good one. And you know what? None of us are allowed to go anywhere for Christmas, so we'll all be watching that hockey game.
That's it. I certainly will be.
Yeah, I have Well, for sure. One thing now that we're through the news, do you want to go in a time machine?
Yeah, let's go in the time machine.
All right, let's hit our flashbacks. It's time for our flashback where we look back at what happened this time last year. And we're going to read our notes and see what happened. This one is even more confusing than normal. I mean, maybe not. I know what some of these are. All right, let's start. We started the show talking about John Hines.
John Hines, coach.
John Hines, at this point in time,
New Jersey Devils?
Former coach of the New Jersey Devils at that point.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. This is good for my brain. This is a good brain workout.
I mean, yeah, we're going to have to remember a lot of things like where free agents signed. It's going to be a fun little game we play. Number 2, though, this is one that I did not know what was happening. It just says Russia. Do you remember
we're talking about December of last year?
December of last year. Was this World Junior talk?
I mean, they wouldn't have been on yet.
But like, was there something leading up to this that was going to lead to the Russian junior team being banned?
It's possible. Or didn't they have something going on with their Olympic athletes too at some point last year?
Yeah. That could be it.
So it could be that.
Could be. All right. The best and worst, definitely check out. Best, John Carlson.
Yeah.
That could have been any week in that start of that season.
So
we could have
true.
picked John Carlson.
How many times did we have the conversation? Is this for real or is it not for real?
Yeah. Right. That was us, our John Carlson segment every week. And then the worst was the San Jose Sharks.
Probably just should have been their goalie.
It should have. There was a lot of things with that. I would say it should be their goalie. But don't worry, Nick. Devin Dubnik's there now.
Oh, they're in trouble. And Joe Thornton's not.
Joe Thornton's not. And guess what we did? This time last year, we fired it up and eliminated the Detroit Red Wings from the playoffs.
Oh. Did you write down every week in your notes what team we eliminated?
Yeah.
That sucks.
I have.
Are they the first one?
They were the first one. December 9th, 2019, the Detroit Red Wings were eliminated.
Hard to argue that, though. Even in hindsight.
Yeah. Let's make this our new thing then. Let's do over under their position from this year, last year, this year.
Oh, don't make me do this, Carl.
I mean, it's tough for the Red Wings. We'll get to have more fun when we talk about other teams.
Okay. So over under their elimination station.
I would just say, like, is it going to be higher or lower? So, like, will the Red Wings be the first eliminated or will they be later in the year this year?
I think they'll be the first eliminated again.
Really?
Yeah. I think we're in for another rough year in Detroit.
So what is it about for a Red Wings fan who wants to have some hope? What are 2 things that they can be excited about this year?
Dylan Larkin's going to be named captain.
Like start of the season, opening night, he'll skate out to the pizza box and with a C.
I hope so. Holding a pizza, delivering it. I don't know to who. Anyways, doesn't matter.
Just the coaching staff. That's what the captain has to do. He brings pizza, orange slices. It's all those things.
So Dylan Larkin's going to be named captain. And you know what? There's a lot of things to look forward to. Anthony Mantha hopefully remains injury free, and he could put up some big numbers again. Last
year you had a prediction.
I had 40 goals, I think.
40 goals in an 82 game season. Do you want to know how many that would be in a 56 game season?
Yeah.
27. 27. Yeah. Do you wish to make a similar claim that Anthony Mantha will score 27 goals?
He's going to score 28, Carl.
Yes!
28.
28 goals for Anthony Mantha. You heard it first.
Mark it in your notebook so this time next year we can make fun of me for it.
It's going in here.
And then the last thing I'll say is that they improved in goaltending. They brought in Thomas Greiss, and he's definitely a step up from Jimmy Howard. So hopefully there's not as many goals against them this year. I still think they're going to be very bad, though.
Remind me, is that a 1-year deal for Greiss, or is he going to be around for a few?
I think it's a 1 year. It might be a 2, but Stevie didn't sign any long-term deals this year.
Almost like he's ready to be able to not give up anyone of value in the expansion draft and take advantage of a flat salary cap.
Yeah, it was a 2-year deal for Thomas Greiss.
Okay.
So this year's going to be painful. I think it's going to be the last really painful year. Definitely last place year.
All right. But you do predict that they'll be the first team. I think so. I think they'll be eliminated later. I think there will be someone worse than them. Because this year with only 56 games, if we need to eliminate 15 teams from the schedule. That's 15 weeks. We need to start the elimination station, which means we need to start probably February 1st. We'll probably start about 2 weeks into the season eliminating teams. So
yeah.
Just don't be terrible those first 2 weeks and you'll be fine.
So top 3 teams that could finish worse than the Red Wings next year.
Top 3 teams that could be worse than the Red Wings. I would foresee a very bad Los Angeles Kings team still. I don't think that they're getting better for sure, but I don't see them getting better this year. I would say the Ducks are worse. And I would say a long shot pick of a team that got worse. That's a little higher. I would say the Arizona Coyotes.
3 solid picks. My eyes went immediately to Anaheim when I asked that question.
Yeah.
All West Coast.
The new Pacific division that is likely going to have the Colorado Avalanche and Vegas Golden Knights in it is going to be terrifying and also easy pickings.
Yeah. Depending on which side of the fandom you fall.
Right. It's terrifying if you're on the one side and easy pickings if you're on the other. So it's good. Let's take a break here. We'll get back on the other side with one more piece of news and our top 10 list. Welcome back, everyone. This is, do you want to just pull up that message that I sent you at 3 a.m. on Saturday night, Sunday morning? That I thought is so important. I cannot forget this, and I want Nick to wake up to a special message from me. Because I don't even think I sent you any context.
You did it. You just dropped the link in the chat.
I mean, why not, right? That's all the context you need.
So, Carl, just so we can hear your glee, why don't you tell us what happened?
All right. So, what happened, Nick? I'm laying there in bed, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can't sleep, so I hit the internet. They have stumbled upon Twitter user T_Thomas91, presumed Nick Cousins' burner account, which brings me so much joy when these start to pop up. Because it's so easy to find them. Turns out, professional athletes using burner accounts, they're just so focused on defending themselves, they're not focused on trying to make it not look like they're defending themselves.
Okay, real talk time. Carl, do you have a burner account?
I made that fake one a few years ago where I made that Eugene Melnick burner account.
Yeah.
That's all. We do not have a 4th line burner account.
I think about making a burner account all the time just to say the things that I don't want people to know it's me saying, and I don't do it. It's not worth it. What are these guys? Why? We'll get into some of these tweets. This is ridiculous.
So, yeah, because even still, you and I have both at various points in time run multiple Twitter accounts.
Yes.
How many times have you tweeted from the wrong one?
Once.
Only once.
Yes. Once.
Wow. That's impressive. Was it embarrassing or just fine?
It was it was dumb. Honestly, like I shouldn't have even been retweeting it from my own personal account because it wasn't that funny. It was I'll tell you what it was. It was someone just posted a picture without any words, and it was when Hurricane Harvey was hitting the US, like the southeastern coast of the US, and it was just a picture of like the satellite image of that region and what's the comedian's name? Steve Harvey's face moving across it. And it was like 8:00 in the morning. I was laying in bed and I was like, I Googled. So I hit retweet. And then somebody in our Slack channel for Wings Nation sent me a message being like, did you just retweet a picture of Steve Harvey as Hurricane Harvey? I was like, oh no, this is not good.
So did you unretweet it?
Yeah, of course I unretweeted it.
I was disappointed. I really wanted to go back into the Wings Nation archives and find that.
It's not there. I don't even know if that Twitter account exists anymore.
But so this is what we've got. We've got Nick Cousins, who's created presumably a burner account, doing a little research in the further days. It also might be a family member of his, Marcus Cousins. Could be him. However, that said, we've got Nick Cousins. Now, I've heard the name Nick Cousins. Right? I know that he plays in the NHL. Do you know what team Nick Cousins plays for?
This is a trick question. You know what I would have said before I read that series of tweets? I would have said the Habs.
What is the answer?
I believe the answer is the Predators.
Yes. He's also played with the Knights as a thing. But this is one of those things, is that this account would follow him from team to team to team, and that team suddenly becomes his favorite team. And it is a magical thing. And unless you're a fan personally of him, like maybe you followed him since he was a kid, or you are related to him, that's really the only reason to change your fandom based on a player, to really have a connection. Because even still, would there ever be, let's say Steve Yzerman were to go to a different team, would you follow him from the Red Wings and that just like give up fandom and switch to that team?
No. I mean, I actively cheered for him with Tampa Bay, but no, the Red Wings were still my team.
Right. So here's some of the gems that we find from Nick Cousins, aka T_Thomas91, which is an account that has subsequently been deleted. Not suspicious at all. So we've got this one. And turns out, Nick Cousins' burner account, not exactly the most PG, so I'm going to censor some of these so that I don't have to censor them later. So this is someone just not even tagging a Nick Cousins in here, just says the name Nick Cousins. I'm in rice to say that it's a joke to play Nick Cousins on power play and hoping that Marc Bergevin didn't re-sign him. Sorry to make you crying about that. And then about 10 laughing cry faces. And then we got...
It's worth it for the emoji descriptions alone.
And then we have the response to that tweet. Okay, and I'm sorry to say that you're a terrible father and your kids are ugly. 10 more laughing cry faces.
That's like he went straight for the throat on that one.
We're starting strong. Starting strong.
Oh my God.
Do not subtweet Nick Cousins. He will call you up for your fathering skills. This one doesn't have, again, it's hard to find some of these tweets now because Nick Cousins on Twitter, that has been bombarded with things. We've got him saying, you don't even know who Andrew Shaw or Nick Cousins is. How can you judge their leadership? It sounds like the person who tweeted that at least knew who they were because they mentioned them.
Yeah. Again, like, were they mentioned before in the previous tweet?
I would hope so, unless he's just dragging Andrew Shaw's name into this. We got him one of the things that is a trend in these tweets, he loves how many points he scores. He's a big, that point scorer, big thing. He also responded to someone who responded to the actual Nick Cousins Twitter handle, which I appreciated. So, you know, what was nice was the official Nick Cousins got upset about something that someone said about him and quoted it. So Jason Paul, who I've seen his work in a ton of places. I'm not sure who exactly it is that he works with or if he just independently does this stuff, but I've seen his analytics pieces all over the place. He talks about Nick Cousins shouldn't be on the power play, and a classic comeback. How many NHL games have you played? Was the Nick Cousins comeback for that one. But that wasn't even from the burner account. That was something that he was so proud of. That's going straight on Nick Cousins' official account.
And that's one of the things that for me falls under that is actually Nick Cousins' burner account. Because the chirp is just so similar to the way T. Thomas is doing his chirps.
Yeah. We've got and then T. Thomas responds to that tweet's replies. So it's like he switched. So, you know, someone responds saying that some of the sharpest minds in the game have never played the NHL. The sharpest minds in the game at least get paid by the NHL to do their job. These guys sit and watch from TV. Pretty good take, if you ask me.
He's not wrong, Carl. We just sit and watch TV.
Sharpest minds in the game right here. And we are not getting paid by teams. And that's the difference between us, Nick Cousins, and NHL general managers. That's the only difference.
That's it. And if teams would want to pay us money, Buffalo Sabres, I'm still available. Yep. Feel free to reach out.
He also, while with the Montreal Canadiens, picked himself in the Habs first goal contest, which I really appreciate. Which I've seen, like, there are contests that I've seen NHL teams, like fan contests that I've seen them participate in. I want actual players to just own it and pick themselves every single time. I think that would be hilarious.
That'd be amazing.
Someone should do that this year.
Just pick their name all the time.
Like, always just tweet before every game. That's the last thing you do before you step out on the ice is you tweet at the official account, me.
Yeah.
And you go out there and you do it. 56 games, 56 goals. First goal every game. He also defended himself with a risky hit that he had on Brock Besser, this is what started to tip people off, was because he knew an abnormally large amount about the actual details of this hit. So he said Cousins initiated his contact while Besser had the puck and finished his check before they even got to the stanchions. By the looks of the hit, Cousins was the one who hit the stanchion. They got tangled up and Besser lands awkwardly. How is this dirty? So again, talking about things that, like, bringing up things, no one was even saying that. No one was saying, he's like, look, I hit the stanchion. I mean, he hit the stanchion first.
Sounds like he copy pasted from his appeal email.
Yeah. He also, so from an SB Nation account, SB Nation, fine site, nothing wrong with it. There's some great writers over there. There's some whatever writers over there. Nick Cousins, not happy with any of them, especially Brian Baston, because he was the one, when the Preds signed Nick Cousins, he was the one who wrote up the article, and his response was, who the F is Brian Baston? Guy sounds like an absolute plug. He also, again, more points totals. Loves to talk about his points totals.
Which is funny because he doesn't get many of them.
No, there's not a lot going on. He's also, I don't know if you recall this, Nick Cousins also got in some allegations for some things that he should not have been doing. This Twitter account, big time defender of him in those situations. So, in general, Nick Cousins having a banner time, but it brings me so much joy that we get to dive into this and that we get to think, like, what is Nick Cousins doing?
Did you know Nick Cousins has been in the league for 6 years?
That doesn't surprise me. He's managed to be with 3 teams. One of and you know that NHL players do this. We have experienced this on the show before. I don't know if this was when you were on or before your time. We were handing out high sticking points, and Matthias Ekholm, also with the Predators, maybe it's a Predators thing that they just search their names. He scored the game winner, so we tweeted it out. Matthias Ekholm, congratulations, you scored the game, winning goal. Here's the points for people who picked him. And his official account liked the tweet. Which I like that. I like that.
That was nice. That's nice. Do you think a lot of players have burner accounts?
Yes. I would say every single one of them has a burner account. Even if it's just for them to search, like, they just follow people, right? Like, because, I mean, not all of them. I remember back when, like, the Oilers all got drafted, like Taylor Hall and Jordan Eberle and all them, and you could, like, you see the things that they follow. NHL players should not, for the most part, show the things that they like to associate themselves with.
No, you can also look at what people like on Twitter. Yeah.
Like if you go to Matthias Ekholm and go far enough back, you'll find our tweet.
It's just so crazy to me that somebody goes and name searches themselves on Twitter. It's ridiculous. And then start replying to people on top of that. How do you have so much energy?
I could not be bothered. I mean, at that point in time, I would probably do it once. I bet I would do it once, and I would hate myself so much for it that I would delete my account and like delete the app. Like I would just, because I would feel so bad, because as a professional athlete or really anyone, right? You have a publicist or someone who should be doing those things for you. Like, hey, like, what is the general sense of me right now? I don't want to have to go find that out myself and read all the things that people say.
No, absolutely not. But speaking of like finding the energy to do things like this was all uncovered by Austin Egri. I don't know who this guy is, but how he managed to connect all of these dots, that was mostly what was running through my mind reading this on Sunday morning, is like, where did this guy find the time to go and pull all of this together?
Yeah, it's good. And I imagine it being, there's that tweet, right? I've researched this for months and he just tweeted it out. I imagine that being the scenario. Like Elliot Friedman's got this big thing pending and he's like, he's doing his due diligence because he's got a reputation to uphold. This guy just sneaks it in right out from under him.
Just tweets it out. And then my last comment on this, because I know we got to get to our top 10s. We're running long. T. Thomas, reference to Tim Thomas?
Got to imagine, right? Yeah.
Like, that's the icing on the cake for me.
It's so good. Yeah. Let's very quickly, let's try to make this a quick top 10. Our top 10s lately have not. Somehow, we always go over in the summer. And this is what happens. So let's go to our summer top 10 list. All right. This is a top 10 list that we can guarantee Nick Cousins will not be on. So good news, Nick. I know you're going to find this because we're going to mention you by name. We might even tag you in it so you can really find it. Just when you listen, no, you're not going to be talked about anymore because this list is the top 10 Knicks in the NHL.
I really like this one. I really like this one. And you're right. Nick Cousins is not going to be on it. He's got to be like number 18 or 14 or however many there are.
There are 17, so 18 seems appropriate. So our criteria is active players as of the end of last season. You have to be a Nick or a Nicholas to get on this list. So sorry to like Nick Ehlers or Nikita Kucherov. I'm sorry, you're not on the list.
No. No Russian variations of the name, apparently.
But like, do they go by Nick? I know that like you'll see it, but not often.
I have no idea. and let's not try and figure it out right now.
I was going to say, you're a resident Nick expert, and these rules were vetted by you, so...
Yeah, we're basically going with anyone who spells Nick the normal way.
But also adding Nicholas Dromerson onto that list. Because he doesn't.
Oh, he's not on my list. Oh, that's why he's not on my list. All right.
He skips the C. All right, so let's shortlist some folks here. I'm just going to very, very quickly go through. Nick Backstrom.
Yes, absolutely.
Nick Foligno.
Carl, come on.
Nick Bonino.
Foligno Bonino?
I think
he makes it.
I think Bonino has to simply because he comes after Foligno.
Yeah, right? I think he makes it.
Nick Leddy.
I don't know if he makes this list anymore.
I'm going to skip Nick Leddy.
Yeah.
Nick Bukestad.
Yeah, I think he makes this list.
Go with a yes as well. Then we've got Nick Cousins skipped.
Nope.
Nick Ritchie.
Don't know much about this one, which probably tells me no.
Probably not. Nick Schmaltz.
Yes,
I think
great name.
Nick Schmaltz is on there.
Yes.
Nick Jensen.
Yeah, I think so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep.
Guarantee this is a Montreal Canadian Nick that is going on the list. Nick Suzuki.
Absolutely. Loves the environment too.
Does he?
I don't know. I assume so.
Oh, the Suzuki thing.
Yeah.
I get you. Then we've got, that's all that we have for Nick. I think Nicholas Dromelson didn't have a great season, but he's on there.
He's got to be on there. Yeah, for sure.
That's a name that I'm not going to be able to spell. So that puts us at 1, 2, 3. I skipped a Nick that we put on the list. Nick Schmaltz. I skipped Schmaltz. I think we got Nick Ritchie's got to go on the list at this point in time.
Okay. That's 9. So does that mean Nick Leddy makes it?
Who did I skip? Yeah, we can put Nick Leddy on. Here's what Bukestad. I skipped Bukestad.
Those guys are out.
All right, there we go. Those are our Nicks. We got quick rundown in no particular order, aka quasi-alphabetical. Nick Backstrom, Nick Suzuki, Nick Jensen, Nick Foligno, Nick Bonino, Nicholas Dromelson, Nick Schmaltz, Nick Ritchie, Nick Bukestad, and Nick Leddy. It's a tongue twister.
A lot of Nicks on there.
It's a lot of Nicks. And we finished that just in the nick of time. So let's move on to ranking our Nicks.
Start at the bottom. Last one who even made that list, we had to come back to him, Nick Leddy.
Yeah. I would say Nick Leddy would be my leader as well. We weren't super interested in having him, but I mean, I think there's a collection of like 3 or 4 Nicks that I'm thinking should be at the bottom of this list.
Okay.
Nick Ritchie is one of them. Again, a late addition to this list.
Yep.
Now, if do we use the Nick criteria, which is just straight points? Is that what we're going off of here?
I mean, I think there's some other things to take into consideration, but we can start with the points. Yeah.
Okay. Because Nick Ritchie is a forward. Nick Leddy is a defenseman. And they both had the same amount of points last year.
Well, I think that puts Leddy ahead of Ritchie, don't you?
I think so. So welcome to 10th place, Nick Ritchie. Number 9, Nick Leddy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Where do you think for number 8?
What do we think for number 8? So closer to the bottom of my list, I've got Jensen, I've got Schmaltz, I've got Bonino. Those would be like my 3 kind of next rankings. Okay,
because I would have Jensen and Schmaltz there. So let's have a Jensen Schmaltz debate. I would, off of your point, Schmaltz, great name.
Great name.
Outside of that,
I mean, not bad point total wise.
last year he had a great season, right? A few years back in Chicago, playing on some of those top lines, he had a similarly great season. He was in that trade, sending what's the other brothers, like the bad Stalls, with all those young brothers.
Now I'm drawing a blank because you're drawing a blank. Oh man, everyone knows who we're talking about.
Yeah, that guy, right?
I can picture their faces in my head.
I know. He was in that trade, right? That sent Schmaltz to Arizona and the other one back to Chicago.
Yes.
Stromes. The Stromes,
there you
go. So I think that it's not super close. I would even argue Leddy over Jensen at this point, but I would strongly, when you've come off a 45 point season in a shortened season, on an Arizona team that really needed to significantly rely on depth, I would say that Nick Schmaltz is my Nick.
I agree. He's definitely higher than Jensen. I have a soft spot for Nick Jensen because he started his career as a Red Wing, and he started very late into his years. Like, he didn't make the NHL until he was like 27 or 28, and he's a solid defenseman, but the Red Wings just sucked. So he kind of got the short end of the stick in Detroit.
So where they just let him go? They traded him? What happened?
They traded him to Washington. I think he got a couple second round draft picks in return for them. And he played out the rest of his season in Washington. And then Washington actually re-signed him for a couple of years at like $2 million or something. So
there you go.
All's well that ends well.
Good on him. All right. So we've got now Nick Bonino, Nick Foligno, Nick Backstrom, Nick Bukestad, Nick Suzuki, and Nick Hjalmarsson.
So many Nicks. So I had Bonino kind of at the higher end of those last three guys that we talked about. But like, looking at his point totals, he's better than I thought he was.
Definitely. Like he had a good season, pretty good season. He's moved around a bunch, through his career. Signed that 4-year deal in Nashville. And Nashville's a team that just loves their center depth. And he is, without a doubt, the best Nick on the Predators.
Easily, yes. Who's not as good as I thought they were? Nick Bukestad.
Nick Bukestad? My pick for this next one would actually be to stay in Arizona and go with Nick Hjalmarsson.
Hjalmarsson, eh?
A name that I still can't say correctly.
Okay, I wrote it down when you told me I missed him. Let me spell it out and you tell me if I got it right or not, okay?
All right.
Hjalmarsson.
You did it.
I got it?
You did it.
Boom, baby.
Do you want to know which letter I made my first mistake on? Because I didn't even try to spell his full name and still got it wrong.
Was it the H?
No, I knew it started with an H.
The double S?
No, I did not make it all the way to the double S. I went Hjalmarsson, not...
Oh, you threw an R in there?
I was like, let's just add a second R into this name.
It's not unreasonable, Carl. Don't feel too bad about it. He has a very hard name.
I feel a little bad about it. Anyways,
do you know where he's from?
That's Gina. I'm on his page.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. I would have guessed Sweden. I would have guessed it. Like, I don't know how to spell his name, but most names that I don't know how to pronounce, I can guess where they're from. So since going to Arizona, he has struggled significantly.
Yeah.
And his best days were in Chicago for sure. He's never, this is one where you cannot use the point criteria because he's never been, his best play is not as a point producing defenseman. And so to look at that and to see what his value is not there, but, certainly has not performed as Arizona's hoped, especially last year. Last year was a particularly difficult year for him.
Yeah, I agree. I'm okay with that.
All right. Nick Hjalmarsson, which now that I took out that extra R, is way easier to say.
It's way easier to say, I know.
Welcome to number 6. So our top 5 Nicks. Nick Backstrom, Bukestad, Foligno, Bonino, and Suzuki. You were... tell me about Bukestad. You said not as good as you thought.
Not as good as I thought. I thought he was better than his point total show, and I thought Bonino was worse than his point total show. So that's kind of how they're falling into place for me. But I thought Bukestad was a much bigger goal scorer than he actually is.
Yeah, I think we think back to him during kind of those seasons where he got traded, right? Where he ended up in Pittsburgh. And we're excited for what he could do with the Penguins. And then that didn't really happen once he actually got there. Bonino, on the other hand, kind of also moved around, went to Pittsburgh. They've got that Pittsburgh connection. I mean, I'm very okay putting these two as 3 or as 4 or 5. Again, different roles on the team though. Like Bonino is not going to be that goal scorer, but still is putting up better numbers than what Bukestad is.
Yeah, and he's a pretty he may not be a goal scorer, but he's a pretty consistent contributor.
Absolutely. So I'm very good putting Bukestad at 5 and Bonino at 4.
Good. Me too. Plus Bonino got to win the Stanley Cup on Phil Kessel's line.
Which is...
it's worth a lot in my books.
Yeah. What was the name of that? Who else was on that line? Because there was a name.
HBK.
HBK. That's what I thought.
The HBK line. It was Bonino, Kessel, and the H was
Carl
Hagelin. Yeah.
It was the Nick and Carl line. That's what they should have called it.
Was I on? I don't think I was on the podcast at that time. Otherwise, we would have eaten that up.
We would have been a Nick and Carl podcast.
The Nick and Carl podcast. And then our intro is just not that Nick and Carl.
Just the other ones. All right. The podium. The Nick podium is Suzuki, Backstrom, and Foligno. This is very difficult for you to be put in this situation. Because for me, like, I have no ties to Nick Foligno.
Nick Foligno is a gem, and he should be number 1.
Okay. I mean, we both know that that's not happening.
Just as he deserves to lift his Stanley Cup, he deserves to be the number 1 Nick in the NHL.
Now, I will give you Nick Suzuki, good prospect, right? Drafted 13th overall in 2017, traded for Max Pacioretty. First season in the NHL this past season, did well for himself. I mean, he played every game, was able to, had about a point a game pace, contributed, got some time.
Looked really good in the playoffs.
Yes.
7 points in 10 games.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're talking future potential, Nick Suzuki would be higher on this list, I think. But right now, are you putting him ahead of either Foligno or Backstrom?
No.
Okay.
Are you?
But no. But if I were to think, I would have to think very hard on if I were to trade. I mean, I'd rather Suzuki than Foligno.
Okay. That doesn't make him better, Carl.
That's what I'm saying. Right now, if I'm playing a game tomorrow, I want Foligno, and that's what this is. But
that's
long term, I'd rather Suzuki.
So Suzuki at 3?
Suzuki at 3, which brings us to...
Yes, I'll take it. I never thought I'd get Bonino past Suzuki. I didn't have to work very hard, so thank you.
This is what happens when we come up against
Foligno. I said Bonino. Yeah, I know. We are... oh, man, we're way over.
We're going an hour, so we
will be way over by the time we finish this up.
I mean, we're going to spend the next 35 minutes debating Backstrom versus Foligno because I'm not sure how much of a fight you're going to put up. And this one I'm not just going to like blindly say, right? But it's Backstrom. And I'm very curious to know what reason you're going to give me that's going to tell me I'm wrong.
I I can't defend that one. All I can do is act nice and say please. No, it's Backstrom. I mean, look, we've been talking about points for this whole list, and Nicholas Backstrom has more. He's an overall better centerman, and he has been so more consistently than Nick Foligno has.
Yeah. And longer term, consistently, I would say I would be shocked if we were to do a year by year comparison. I would be shocked if there was a season that Foligno was better than Backstrom.
Yeah, no, I agree. And interestingly, though, they've both been in the NHL for 13 years, so they're two good players to kind of compare against each other over the course of their career. But yeah, Backstrom is the better player, objectively speaking, not the better person.
No, I mean, if we were having a Nick competition, you'd be first, so it doesn't really matter.
Oh, shucks, Carl. You're making me blush.
Here's the question. This is something that you are uniquely qualified to answer, though. What is it about this list that we had? Because I noticed it as we were going through. I never really thought about it. Why are so many Knicks centermen? What is it about Knicks that make them perfectly fitted for that role?
Well, the C is right in the middle of their name.
That's true. So why are they so they're not captain material, they're center material.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you're Nick Foligno, then you're both. Unless
you're Nick Hjalmarsson, then you don't have the C, which is why you play defense.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense.
That's it. The answer to your question.
Well,
did you think it would be that easy?
We solved it. I didn't. No, I thought you had some sort of larger insight for us.
No, I don't. Although, funnily, I play hockey, or I play center when I play Bear League too. Mostly. I don't like to, but I do.
You're better than me. I play on the right side.
Yeah, I'd rather play wing. It's too hard skating back and forth all the way up and down all the time.
I don't do it because I'm terrible at draws. That's my biggest reason.
Oh.
I put the same amount of hustle no matter what position I'm playing, though.
Okay, Carl. Can't wait to watch tape of your game.
Rinks are closed. Sorry.
How convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Sneak into the bubble.
I look under 21, right? Pass that off. I'll just for men, all these grays I got going here. Well, that brings us to the end of our show. Thank you for tuning in this week. We'll be back next week where we'll predict the next delay in the NHL season. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, the Full Press Radio app. You can find our podcast at anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find us. You can go to the fourthlinepodcast.com where you can find out more about the show. You can also find great articles. In the slowness of the NHL offseason, we have not had anything, but this week, Mike Laybourne saw his shadow and didn't see his shadow and decided it was time to come out of hibernation and wrote an article about alternatives. So creative alternatives if the NHL season weren't to happen. So, really good ideas he had over there. A lot of fun with that article. Check that out at thefourthlinepodcast.com. You can find us on Twitter at fourthlinepodcast, where we will search our name and see what comes up. And we might respond to you if you talk about us. We also just might respond as if we're Nick Cousins. We might spend the rest of this season pretending to be a Nick Cousins burner account. Why not? Right?
Absolutely. Let's just start a bunch of them.
I was just going to do it from the podcast account. I was just going to blindly be defending Nick Cousins only on ice performance. Off ice, I'm not going to speak to that. But his point totals speak for themselves. Numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie. It's the one thing about numbers. They don't lie.
They don't. And we'll be back next week. We are here to get you through this NHL offseason every single week. And when it finally ends, if it ever ends, we'll be there for you then. See you next week.
It's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. Where's the best place to search your name on Twitter? Nick Cousins will tell you it's while you're sitting on the